Adaptations to natural resources is the first lesson within our human adaptations to the physical environment unit. Your objective was on your Canvas page, but for your bell work, it says, what if you could choose? What if you could choose between a bowl of salt or a bowl of gold? Which would you choose? Maybe you should tell me why. Take a moment to write that down. So for source one, on your paper, you are going to jot down any observations or anything you analyze from this source. I'm going to read it to you in case it's difficult to read through the video. It says, salt is a mineral that was in great demand, particularly with the beginning of an agricultural mode of life. That means farming. Hunters and food gatherers probably obtained a large amount of their salt intake from the animals they hunted and from fresh plant foods. Salt only becomes an essential additive where fresh foods are unobtainable in very dry areas, where body perspiration is also normally excessive, means where you sweat a lot. It becomes extremely desirable, however, amongst societies with relatively restricted diets, as was the case with arable agriculturalists. So take a moment and pause the video to jot down any observations and what you think this means, so anything you analyze. So number one, why do you think salt is worth its weight in gold? Take a moment and answer that question. For number two, it says color the key and create a graph to reflect the scarcity and surplus of salt and gold within these regions. So if we look at West Africa, and yellow is represented by salt, that means they have just a little bit of salt, not a lot. They have lots of gold, however, right? In North Africa, not too far away, but you do have to cross an entire desert, they have lots of salt because they have salt mines and very little gold. So basically they're opposite from each other. West Africa has gold mines, literally sitting on a gold mine, and North Africa has salt mines. So take a moment, pause, and if you're using the worksheet, go ahead and do this on the worksheet. But if you're taking your own notes, you can draw, like on a separate sheet of paper, you can draw this out pretty simply. Let's talk about patterns of exchange. These West Africans have few natural resources for salt and always needed to trade for it, right? They have very little access to the salt, very little fresh plants. It's very hard to obtain fresh meat. Gold, however, was much easier to come by. The people who lived in the desert of North Africa could easily mine salt because they literally lived in a salt mine, but they didn't have much access to gold. They craved that precious metal that would add so much to their personal splendor and prestige, right? Gold has always been valuable. These mutual needs led to the establishment of long-distance trade routes that connected very different cultures. Before you answer the question, look at the picture here. This is called a simple beam scale, which was used by West African people to weigh the gold dust that they would collect. Skill was required to use them because you had to be careful about whether or not it was windy and if someone was trying to alter it, like kind of be tricky, right? All right, so take a moment, answer number three, which says, how did these two regions' natural resources, so gold and salt, shape a pattern of exchange? So how were they trading? Use details to support your answer. Go ahead, pause the video to do that. All right, so let's talk about how these two regions traded, because if you look at this desert, it's pretty tough to cross, right? And you have to not only get across alive, but bring stuff with you and bring stuff back. So how did they do that? All right, so let's look at source two. Again, this time you're going to observe and you can write down anything you analyze. I'm going to let you make your observations first. So pause the video and then play again and we'll talk about it for a second. All right, so the first thing you want to do when you look at a source is read the title and any captions. So this one says Timbuktu, a center for trade, right? So Timbuktu, if you look, is right here. Growing up, whenever I would ask my parents, like, where are we going? My dad would always say Timbuktu. I always thought it was made up. It talks about how Timbuktu is a center for trade, right? So if we're looking at West Africa, that's over here. And North Africa, we're talking about over here. That kind of looks like a W. That's an N. All right, So these two regions are trading. If you look at the legend at the bottom, we're going to focus on the trade route, which is marked by the solid line, the salt mines, which are marked by little like pickaxes, and then the gold mines, right? So West Africa has lots of gold mines, North Africa has lots of salt mines, and the trade route goes between the two. It also goes all the way to Egypt, and in your sophomore year, you'll learn about Mansa Musa's route to Mecca. We don't need to focus on that specifically today. We just want to look at this. So observe, what do you see in the map? And then you should have already jotted that down. And then analyze, what is this map showing you specifically? How far apart are these distances? Any other things you can analyze from the map. So take a moment, jot that down. All right, so for transportation, so the way that they got across the sub-Saharan desert is by camels. So camels can go a week without water and a month without food. A month without food. I can't go 30 minutes without food. A thirsty camel can drink almost 30 gallons of water in just 10 minutes. For protection against the sandstorms, the camels have 2 sets of eyelids, which is actually common in a lot of different animals. One that goes down and one goes up. And those eyelids help them clear out any dust that gets in, but they also have crazy long eyelashes that keeps the dust from blowing into their eyes. The extra eyelids can wipe sand like windshield wipers. Their nostrils can shrink to a narrow slit to keep out blowing sand. Camel feet are very wide, the base of them, which helps them walk on the sand. Take a moment and answer number 4. How did these two regions' natural resources shape transportation networks? Use details to support your answer. All right. We're going to look at Africa and then onward. So Muslim traders spread Islam throughout Western Africa. So as they began to trade, the Muslims they're from North Africa and also from the Middle East, but they will bring Islam to Western Africa. And the Islamic law that spreads there helps lower crime rates and also spreads the common language of Arabic, which is encouraging to trade. African rulers and merchants established trade links within the Mediterranean world, Western Asia, and the Indian Ocean region. The merchants from Britain, France, Portugal, and the Netherlands, so all these European traders who began trading along the Atlantic coast of Africa, therefore encountered a well-established trading population, which was regulated by savvy and experienced local rulers, right? So West Africa and North Africa had been trading for a long time. They knew what they were doing. They weren't naive, right? So number 5 asks, what long-term effects outside of an exchange of goods and emergence of transportation networks? So you can't say like, oh, well, they trade and, oh, they use camels. But what else does the scarcity and supply of sources have on Africa? What other things do we see aside from just saying exchange of goods and transportation? Can you be more specific is what I'm saying. Use the information on this slide to answer number 5. All right, based on the information we've covered so far, how are humans in Africa adapting to their environment, right? Because this unit is called Human Adaptations to the environment, to the physical environment. So how are they adapting in Africa? Take a moment, answer this question. All right, for source 3, you're going to write down any notes you hear as I read it to you, but you're also going to be looking for the answer to the question on your notes, which says, what can you predict about the future of Africa? So European trading had a transforming impact on Africa. Europeans poured into Africa in enormous volumes of commerce, the whole range of European manufactured goods and hardware, notably firearms, luxury goods, especially alcohol, and transshipped items from Asia, like textiles, which is like fabric. This stimulated a widespread taste for imported goods, so Africans started wanting to import goods, but that was satisfied in part by the exchange and transfer of slaves. So what are your initial observations? What can you say? Like, what can you analyze about this source? And then what can you predict about the future of Africa? Take a moment if you need to and jot down the answer. All right, the last thing you need to do is watch this YouTube video. It would not let me embed it into this PowerPoint, so the link for this video is on your page. So watch this video and answer numbers 7 and 8. And that's it. Have a great day, guys.